coming? This is an irony. On the very day the mayor of this city has a delegation down on the border, they're persecuting people here and trying to stop on the border. 60 days from the day. 60 days from the day.
Take a step back. Take a step back.
60 days from the election.
Stop hurting America! Stop hurting America, you greasy grifter!
So that was, of course, serial criminal and apparently greasy grifter Steve Bannon surrendering himself to prosecutors in Manhattan earlier today. Now, that's on charges relating to his little fundraising scheme that he personally profited off of, which was to somehow create a wall on the southern border. Again, not only is it a ridiculous idea, it was always a ridiculous idea when Donald Trump was talking about it. And the reason is, of course, for one, you're not going to stop undocumented immigrants from coming in by building a wall. They can just fly over. They can catapult things over. I mean, ladders, all that stuff. Okay. And of course, the other reason is that would involve going through some pretty difficult terrain, as well as getting permission to build on private land. And there was talk of using eminent domain, where the government literally comes in to steal your property, which I'm sure all of these great conservatives who don't like big government coming in and taking things from them, taking their liberty, would totally be fine with the government coming in and taking their land to build a giant wall in. Something tells me they didn't think about this very much, but then again, many on the right who do not use their brains. Not all of them, but many of them, to be fair. All right, so that said, Steve Bannon and a couple of co-conspirators come up with this idea, hey, let's take in a bunch of donations and tell them we're going to build a wall. We're going to build, you're going to build the walls on the southern border, guys. It's going to be great. It's going to be a tremendous wall. We just need you to send us money. We don't actually have a plan on how to do it, but just send us money anyway. And the morons did. They sent them so much money. Of course, when the wall did not get built, donors were sitting there saying, hey, wait a minute. What happened? I thought you said you were going to build a wall. Oh, we lied. And so, look, Bannon, in his role in this, now faces charges of money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy. This is according to a newly unsealed New York State indictment. So that's very important here. Because if you can remember, this was the same crime that he was pardoned by former President Donald Trump for when Trump was in his last days of his administration. And so, look, back in August of 2020, for example, Bannon was yanked off his yacht by law enforcement. I don't know if it was his yacht, but it was a yacht. And so they arrested him and indicted him for personally pocketing $1 million from the We Build the Wall charity. Now, Trump granted him clemency just before leaving office. That's before he was convicted. So now, here's the thing. Presidential pardons can only apply to federal cases. This is a state case. This happens to be in New York, in Manhattan specifically, meaning the local prosecutors there, and I'll tell you who they are able to bring cases covering the same ground that involve potential violations of applicable state statutes. And according to the Washington Post, Bannon's case will be handled in New York Supreme Court by Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg and New York Attorney General Letitia James. So now, let me be honest. One of those names concerns me. And that's Alvin Bragg. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. Alvin Bragg is probably one of the weakest DAs I've ever seen. And it's because he decided not to go after Donald Trump. And look, you had two prosecutors that were working on a criminal case against Donald Trump in Manhattan. This is related to his taxes, inflating and deflating his assets, inflating it, of course, to get loans, deflating it, of course, when it came to taxes. So that's tax fraud. Or alleged tax fraud. These prosecutors said, we've got Donald Trump dead to rights. We can nail him. We've got him on this case. And Alvin Bragg said, nope. No, oh, no. Of course, now he's saying, well, the investigation, it's still going on. The case is still going on, except that nothing is actually happening. So it's effectively dead, even though technically it's still ongoing. So again, that's what worries me. Alvin Bragg and his unbelievable weakness and fecklessness as Manhattan DA against Trump, it makes me worried. Now, that said, to be fair, we're not dealing with Donald Trump. We're dealing with Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, much smaller target. Now, just as much of a grifter as Donald Trump, perhaps even more so, but certainly not as powerful as the former president of the United States. That said, I've got low expectations of Alvin Bragg. However, Letitia James seems to be much better. So there is a chance that with Letitia James there, she could actually be one of the ones that helps bring enough pressure. And by the way, bring an actual case against Bannon that would be lead to prosecution, to lead to some amount of justice for, obviously the massive amount of grift and theft. Because look, what Bannon did ultimately is rob his donors, rob people that actually believed him. In fact, in a statement issued after the indictment was unsealed, Bragg said Bannon acted as the architect of a multi-million-dollar scheme to defraud thousands of donors across the country, including hundreds of Manhattan residents. That would, of course, give them standing. Bannon took advantage of his donors' political views to secure millions of dollars, which he then misappropriated, James said in her own prepared remarks. Mr. Bannon lied to his donors to enrich himself and his friends. Well, that is absolutely what happened. Now, look, I know some of you might be thinking, look, they're Trump supporters. They gave their money to a con artist because they hate, they're racist and they hate immigrants. Again, the whole idea was to build a wall to prevent immigrants from coming into the country. I get it, and I don't feel any sympathy for the people that he robbed. But it's not about whether or not I feel sympathy towards them. No, it's the law. It's about upholding rule of law. This man did a crime. He robbed people. He took advantage of them, lied about a project, and put the money in his pocket. He should absolutely face justice. So now there's one more question here, one more legal issue, and that's the issue of double jeopardy. Since he had already been indicted for the same crime before, you might be wondering, okay, but isn't this double jeopardy? You can't be charged for the same thing, right? No, there's good news on that. It turns out the clemency, the pardon that Trump gave him before is actually working against him in this case, because he was granted clemency in the federal case before he even got convicted. And so what you have here is now New York, again, not federal, New York is going after Bannon, and they're free and clear. It is perfectly legal to go after him for the same crime because he hadn't been convicted of it before. So there you go. So look, Bannon, I don't know, looks like Bannon might be in some serious trouble. Finally,